Hey all, this is Redditosker. I have once again noticed an upsurge of critical comments for The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and I want to talk about them. But before I do, first let me address the inevitable comments that will go something like this. Oh, Redditosker, why do you even have to give any attention to those people? Or something along those lines. And the answer is because I want to. Because I want to. Because I don't believe that the majority of people that say stuff like this are just stupid and wrong. And I find it valuable to try and understand where they're coming from. And hopefully you do too. Plus, I find this situation oddly interesting, and I think I know why it's happening. So let me get into the details. After the Tears of the Kingdom final trailer, there was really no more complaining. Nobody was saying a single negative thing about Tears of the Kingdom. Well, there were a few people, but it was a very minor number. I was keeping a close eye on my comment section, on other people's comment sections, to try and gauge the effect that the final trailer had on the community. And it was a very positive effect. There were open admissions by people that were previously naysayers that at that point became convinced. And with every video that I released, I experienced only people that were expressing overwhelming positivity. There was very little to the contrary. And that remained the case until the previews released yesterday. I immediately noticed on my video on the topic a large influx of negative comments, people expressing disappointment with the trailers, or rather with the previews. I'm still getting them. In fact, let's just do an experiment right now. Let's go to the latest comments I've received on that video, and I bet I find something immediately. And it won't just be negative on stuff like frame rates, or that they don't like the menu, or that they're worried that there's going to be too much menu navigation with fusing every arrow that you want to infuse with an ability. No, I'm willing to bet that I will immediately find something that criticizes the core of what Tears of the Kingdom is going for. Criticizes it on the basis of it being Tears of the Kingdom. Here's one. I'm really excited, but the more and more emphasis is being put on building vehicles and stuff kind of lowers my hype. Like, I get that's probably a big draw for a lot of people, but what about us that want to do all the Zelda stuff that isn't nuts and bolts content? I just want to see some cool graphics, listen to a great soundtrack while an emotionally engaging story is delivered to me. Hopefully a few engaging puzzles, but if 90% of the game is going to be building mecha out of logs, rocks, and some random Zonai parts, I don't know. Listen, I love Zelda. I'm not trying to be a doomer. I guess I just don't need Zelda to reinvent Gary's Mod or something. I'm one of those people that enjoyed Skyward Sword just for the music and story despite its problems with gameplay. It at least had some really cool looking dungeons with some interesting gimmicks. Oh look, and there's another one right beneath it. I'm a huge Zelda fan, but now they have turned it into an overcomplicated crafting building game where you have to craft vehicles and merge things with your weapons before every attack. No thanks, they have turned it into banjo nuts and bolts. Defiantly the wrong way to take the series. These aren't even the criticisms I had prepared for this video. Here's the ones I had saved. The previews have lowered my hype again. I just don't care for the sandboxy stuff. I want dungeons and a story, which it should hopefully provide. Fuse just doesn't excite me, and the enemies being more spongy sounds like a chore. And there's this one. I'm not very interested, sadly. It looks like a fun sandbox type game, but that's not what I buy Zelda for. I'll have to wait to see how good the story is and if there are fun dungeons. You know the really cool trailer they dropped? That had me rather hyped. Watching all these preview impressions from several creators has actually deflated me so bad. Alright. Now the interesting thing is, there's a lot more of these. Like, I would say at least minimum, there's 20% of my comments are along these lines. And not just negative, they're negative in the specific way that all of these comments have been negative. They were happy with what the trailer 3 showed them. They had become excited and hyped for Tears of the Kingdom. And then they saw these previews, and their level of hype has gone down. Their level of hype has decreased. If you go on my video, if you go on other people's videos, if you go on Reddit, if you go on forums, you will find that these are not unique. There is a lot of people that are feeling exactly this specific way. What accounts for this? Where is this reaction coming from? Well, I think I know. So I'll explain it, and if you happen to be one of those people, you can tell me in the comment section if you think I'm correct. Okay, before Trailer 3 came out, there were two groups of people that were unhappy with what Tears of the Kingdom looked like. There were the classic Zelda enjoyers that continue to want Tears of the Kingdom and future Zelda games to not be like Breath of the Wild. They didn't like Breath of the Wild, or they liked Breath of the Wild less than they liked the classic Zelda games. And they criticized Tears of the Kingdom on the basis that they didn't like Breath of the Wild, on the basis that they hadn't seen any of the elements from classic Zelda that they wanted to see return. Most important of those things are dungeons, but also things like story, puzzles, and possibly a greater emphasis on linearity. Okay, now there was also a second group of players that was criticizing Tears of the Kingdom, and these are the Breath of the Wild enjoyers. People that played Breath of the Wild, but were looking at the trailers that were available up till that point, and thinking to themselves, this kind of looks like DLC. There's not enough of a difference between what I'm looking at and what Breath of the Wild was to convince me that this is, worthy of being another game. This doesn't look like 6 years of development time. Now, Trailer 3 came out, and that trailer shut up both of those groups. They weren't complaining past that point, because the trailer showed them what they wanted to see. The Breath of the Wild enjoyers could finally see that, oh my god, this is way different than what I thought it was going to be. This is significantly different than what Breath of the Wild was like. And the classic Zelda enjoyers also seemed to get some of what they wanted. There were places that looked like they could be dungeons or could be leading to dungeons. And if those were dungeons, they looked aesthetically and musically themed. And the third trailer also suggested a greater focus on story, and a more complex story than what Breath of the Wild delivered. And that was enough for them. They also stopped complaining. They seemed to be getting what they wanted. But I also think that the trailer was so good, it was such a high quality trailer, that it made some people forget that they just don't like Breath of the Wild. And that even if they do introduce something like dungeons, and even if they do introduce something like a more compelling story, this is still Breath of the Wild at its base. So I think that the people that are currently up in arms, the people that are complaining at the moment, are not really pro Breath of the Wild. Those people are still satisfied, I think. Most of those people, I think, are still happy. These previews haven't changed that. These complaints, I believe, are coming from the classic Zelda fans who were seduced by how good that trailer was, into forgetting that this is the sequel to Breath of the Wild. They've been reminded that this game is going to have an emphasis on exploration, on slowness, on the sandbox elements, on experimentation with the new mechanics. The previews reminded them that they hate Breath of the Wild. We didn't have an accurate representation in our minds of what this game was going to be like before Trailer 3. But after Trailer 3, and after these previews especially, we now have a very clear idea of what it's going to be like. And if what was shown in that trailer, what's shown in these previews, if it's still not to your liking, if it's still not close enough to classic Zelda for you, then it's simply not going to be. And that's the end of this video. Please unsubscribe and unclick the bell notification. And if this video hasn't made you want to do that, then I'm sure I'll get to you in a future video. Until then, thank you very much for watching.